him all in. You're threatening him with his tournament mortality, and players just aren't looking to go broke. And you're just going to pick up antes and blinds, and you're going to see your stack sort of grow and grow and grow without a lot of risk. And then every once in a while, a small stack is going to call you. But, you know, he might have a hand like King Jack or something, and your 8-6 can even win there. And then people are going to start thinking, well, like, even when you get called with a bad hand, you win. And now you get that air of sort of invincibility. I've seen a lot of people get on a roll with that big stack. And even the few times they get called by the small stacks, they're knocking them out anyway. And they just go on and they run away with the tournament. And that is the easiest way to run away with the tournament. If you're going to try and sit on your big stack and hang in there and wait for the higher finishes, very often you won't even get to the top three. You're just going to ante down, and then something bad's going to happen to you. One of the other stacks that now becomes a big stack is going to flop a big hand against you and bust you, and you end up finishing 4th or 5th anyway. So, I mean, my feeling is the best way to defend against having a 4th or 5th place finish at a final table when you have a big stack is definitely to play aggressively, play offensively, and then the bad things probably won't happen to you. Let's take a look at some other very specific tournament situations. Okay, let's look at a typical tournament situation here. We're down to 5-handed in a hypothetical tournament. We have Jai in first position, first act, and he's down to his last 500. The blinds are 1 and 200 from Mylene and Jared. He looks down at 2 5s, which is certainly a fine hand to move his last $500 in with. And Lori calls with her 2 7s, and we come around to Jim, and he looks down to Ace Jack, and he also throws 500 in the pot. The action comes around to Mylene, and she doesn't have anything, and she throws her hand away. And now we come to Jared, who's going to look at the King 10 of diamonds. Now, certainly that's a hand that probably figures to be beat, but not beat badly. And we start thinking about his options here. He could fold, which would certainly be a terrible play. Or he could call the 300, which wouldn't be a particularly bad play. He's getting well over 6-1 to call for 300, and I think a lot of players would call. But you have to understand, he looks over at Jai, and he knows Jai moved all in for his last 500, and there's a good chance that Jai does not have a great hand. But he knows that both Lori and Jim know that, and if they had a good hand, they would have raised. So he knows that he's probably not up against a really big hand. So now, instead of just calling the 300 here, I would actually recommend that he call the 300 and make a sizable raise, which you see him doing here. He raises 2,500 more, and both Lori and Jim fold. And you'll notice now that since it's a side pot with Jai, he gets his 2,500 back, and now he's put himself in a 50-50 race. He's got King 10 of diamonds against 2 5s. It's very close to a 50-50 hand. But he really only had to invest an extra 300. He's getting over 6-1, and now he has made Lori and Jim's money in the pot dead. So he's getting over 6-1 for his last 300. He has a very inexpensive chance to add over 2,000 to his stack. He can't lose any more money in the pot. He's created 2 dead players in the pot. They can't win the pot, and now all he has to do is he has to beat the 2 5s. This is a very profitable play, and it's one that I'd like to see you add to your tournament repertoire. Okay, let's look at another tournament situation. Again, we have our 5-handed tournament table. The action's on Lori. It's still 1 and 200 blinds. She doesn't have anything, and she folds. And we come to Jim, who looks down at the 9-8 of diamonds, which is certainly a decent hand. He's not too worried about the button because Mylene is short chip behind him, and he opens for 600. Mylene has exactly 600 left and looks at a pretty good hand, King Jack, and she decides to put her last 600 in. Certainly a reasonable decision. Jared folds his nothing. And we come around to Jai, and he has ace queen. This is a hand that, sometimes I would call, sometimes I wouldn't. It would depend on the read I took, but certainly calling isn't a bad play. So now we need to look at the situation. There's 1,900 in the main pot, but Mylene is all in. It's very important to remember who's all in, who isn't all in. Is there any more money to bet? Is there any money in the side pot? In this particular situation, there's no money in the side pot, and we have 1,900 in the main pot. Let's take a look at the flop. And it's Jack 5-3 with the 5-3 of diamonds. And certainly that's a good flop for Jim. He's flopped a flush draw, probably a little bit better than he could have hoped for. And Jai has missed his hand. He checks. He just says ace-queen. And a lot of players at this point. Even intermediate players would make a bet here with Jim's hand. It's a knee-jerk reaction. You flopped a flush draw. It's been checked to you. You're not worried about the person behind you, and you just feel like it's good for your hand to get Jai out. But actually, it's bad for your hand to get Jai to fold. You're up against Mylene, who almost certainly has 9 high beat, and she's all in. You can't get her to fold. So actually, sort of your one customer in the pot, you're actually maybe getting him to fold if your semi-bluff works, when actually you're probably going to have to make your flush, and as it turns out here, Mylene does have the jacks. So you are going to have to make your flush to win. So if you are going to have to make your flush to win, you might as well have Jai in the pot. In fact, he has ace, queen, a spade, and a club. So 2 of your diamonds are either the ace of diamonds or the queen of diamonds. So maybe there is a chance that you would hit your diamond, and Jai would hit a pair and might end up losing more money to you. So not only are you not increasing your chance of winning the pot, but you're actually going to win a smaller pot when you do hit your flush. So this would be a rather large mistake to bet into this side pot, and you need to be careful about situations like this. There are a lot of all-in side pot type situations that come up in tournaments, particularly late in tournaments, and you need to kind of study how those kinds of situations work and realize when it's right to isolate against an all-in player, kind of like the play before, and when it's wrong and when you should just try and make your hand, because bluffing into an empty side pot is just not going to work out for you very well. Other than using the specific skills that I've covered in this tape, there are a number of ways for you to really improve your game. Of course, number one, just playing a lot. There's no substitute for experience. But there are some other ways. And certainly reading books is one of the best ways to improve at No Limit Hold'em or really any poker game. There's always a lot of good information out there. There are a lot of good authors. I would certainly encourage you to start reading some poker books and start then playing and applying those things that you learn in the books at the table. Also, one of the absolute best ways to improve your game is to improve your focus. That's actually one of the good reasons to play poker, because it does develop your focus and your ability to concentrate. One of the best books I've read that really has helped me with my focus is a book called Zen in the Art of Archery. It's written by a fellow named Hergel, and it's set back in post-World War II Japan. He went to Japan after World War II. He was a German philosopher, actually, and he spent time studying with a Zen archery master. And he was trying to develop the fine art of Zen archery. After about 5 years of study where he was going to this archery studio every day, he finally had sort of the perfect Zen moment in archery as he pulled back the bow and he released just in that perfect Zen-like way, and he hit the target right in the bullseye. And he said that when he did it, he knew he had done it. And also his teacher, who was there teaching many other students, immediately realized that he had had that moment of Zen in his attempt to shoot this arrow. And he'd been trying to do this for 5 years. As soon as he accomplished this, his teacher sent him home immediately. And he came back the next day, and he was very upset, and he asked his teacher why he had sent him home. And his teacher told him, "I had to send you home because if you had stayed, you would have spent the entire day trying to duplicate that shot. And then it would have been impossible for you to attain another moment of Zen in your attempts at archery." And the point of that story is that if you are trying to focus, then you're not going to be successful at doing it. You just have to let it happen. And again, it's just like experience. If you're at the table and you're just letting all this information in, you're picking up tells on your opponents and you're using the experience that you've gained in your play, and you just start practicing that art, which is just being at the table and being in the moment, that is how you're going to maintain your focus. There's another reason to try and have that real focus and staying in the moment at a poker table, and where that really comes up is poker tournaments. If you're playing in a poker tournament and you have too much focus on what has happened, whether it's bad beats or bad plays that you've made, or you're thinking too much about what could happen if you go on to win the tournament, or how great it would be to win a World Series bracelet or a World Poker Tour title, all those thoughts are not going to help you play this hand right now. And that's what you need to focus on. So if you stay in the moment, you're not going to worry about